The British Chancellor, George Osborne, has made a public declaration that the ISIS is planning to use cyber jihadis to hack into the air traffic control software to be able to create chaos in the skies. Let me take you through what experts in the United Kingdom now say is a very real possibility. The steps that could create havoc in the skies. The first thing the ISIS hackers are hoping to do is to hack into the air traffic control software. After doing so, the hackers hope to be able to take control of flight operations, hope to be able to commandeer the radars, hope to be able to inject additional fake traffic onto the radars so that there's complete confusion amongst the pilots who are up in the sky. What they're also hoping to do is commandeer the aircraft software to be able to use the lacuna inside the avionics inside an aircraft to be able to hack into the software and then possibly take control of the aircraft and then crash these into various key nuclear installations or other important civic infrastructure.
For years, the world couldn't imagine anything more terrifying than the 9/11 attacks. But that was the Al-Qaeda in 2001. The Islamic State in 2015 is an exponentially deadlier force and is now planning a full-blown cyber jihad. Their target, the United Kingdom. UK Chancellor George Osborne has warned that the ISIS is plotting to use special cyber jihadis to remotely commandeer airliners and crash them into British nuclear power stations and hospitals. The deadly terror script reads like something straight out of a Hollywood techno thriller. Here's what experts believe the ISIS is looking to achieve. ISIS hackers hack into air traffic control software in towers across the UK and take control of flight operations. They then use this to command their aircraft to crash them into nuclear power stations for maximum impact. It is this threat that has forced the UK to double its funding to fight cybercrime to £1.9 billion over 5 years. The possibility of deadly cyber attacks doesn't sound too far-fetched. In the biggest breach in global aviation since the 9/11 attacks, Russia has also now admitted that the passenger jet that crashed over Egypt in October, killing 224 people on board, was brought down by a bomb on board. An Islamic State affiliate has claimed responsibility for the attack, and Russia has offered a $50 million reward for any information on the Sinai plane attackers. Bureau Report, India Today.
This is the kind of stuff that you see in Hollywood movies. It's the kind of stuff you read about in top spy thrillers. It's not the kind of stuff that you expect the Chancellor of the United Kingdom to be publicly talking about and for countries to be actively preparing against. How real is the threat of cyber jihadis hacking into air traffic control computers, potentially also hacking into the avionics of aircraft and crashing them into civic infrastructure, potentially even nuclear stations? Joining us on the newsroom, Air Marshal Arvind Verma. He's formerly with the NTRO. He's formerly with India's Strategic Forces Command, former Air Force officer. Sir, good evening. Welcome. Also with me is Captain A. Ranganathan, one of India's foremost experts on aviation security. Thank you very much to the both of you for joining us. Air Marshal, I want to start by asking you about this public admission by the British Chancellor, none less, where he talks about how cyber jihadis, he believes, are actively trying to crash into the computer systems of the air traffic control. Is this, in your view, possible? If this were to be a war game and if this hack was to actually happen, what chaos can it cause?
Oh, let me put this in the right perspective. As far as aviation is concerned, what the Chancellor has said is true. This admission has come now, but this threat has been looming large for a very long time. Ever since all our systems, avionics, or the aviation by itself has gone into the domain of cyber, the moment you've gone into the cyberspace, the cyber threats exist.
So what happens if a cyber jihadi hacks into air traffic control systems and suddenly it's not the ATC controllers but it's the cyber jihadi who's got access to the radars?
No, let's not create fear psychosis into this whole statement of the Chancellor. The threat is real. It is hypothetically possible to hack into systems, but then the entire aviation systems are designed in a manner that there will always be backups.
Sure.
So when a hacker gets into the system, what will happen is it will result in either jamming of the systems or flooding the system with additional information.
No, I'm sorry, just to try and put this in layman's term, what you're suggesting is on the big radars they have in air traffic control rooms, a hacker, if he was somehow able to get in, he can inject fake traffic.
That is one of the possibilities.
Suddenly in front of the ATC, there are extra planes hanging around.
This is one of the possibilities. Okay. Or the other possibility, the screens just go blank.
Then everybody is blind.
Everybody is blind.
Then you're down to manual flying.
But that does not mean that it will result in catastrophe wherein planes will go into each other. Some accidents may happen. But then the aircraft systems themselves have redundancies in terms of.
But you're down then to essentially manual flying.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, Captain Ranganathan, we've heard from the Air Force officer as someone who's looking at it from a civilian perspective. What's your sense of, how real the possibility is of hackers possibly getting into ATC computers? And if this were to be a war game and you were to explain to our viewers what can happen if they succeed in doing so, sir?
You see, the question of hacking into the radar on the air traffic control and injecting false traffic, that may be possible on the ground system, but you will not have to worry about it in the air because every modern aircraft has what you call a modus transponder, which is independent from the ground. So a hacker will not be able to get into hundreds of aircraft's modus transponder to hack. And the traffic collision avoidance system will ensure that you only see the real aircraft and not the hypothetical aircraft.
Okay, the second scenario that the British Chancellor talks about, which is being discussed in security circles as well, is the possibility of hackers crashing into the computer software on these on the jetliners themselves. Now, if that were to happen, and if this is being discussed publicly, then surely the British intelligence setup, for example, believes that there are ways in which this can be done. If this is done, then what happens, Amash?
See, again, hypothetically or theoretically, it is because there are always gaps in the softwares. Everything is software driven. So if there are gaps, theoretically it is possible to get into them and tamper with the control systems of the aircraft, which are being driven by the software. But as far as aviation onboard systems are concerned, they have a lot of hardening which is done. And this is what we need to be focused on, that the industry has to make the systems as hardened as possible.
No, I'm sorry.
So far,
in the way that I understand it from a layman's perspective, if hypothetically some lacuna is found and someone is able to hack into the software that drives computers on the planes, the avionics, then the pilot still has manual control.
Yes, it will have manual control unless this kind of a thing is so well timed that it happens at a critical juncture. Say the
what is a critical juncture?
Say at the time of takeoff or landing, which is the most crucial part, where the time
so
is.
If you're on autopilot when you're landing, and hypothetically at that time somebody enters your software, then what happens?
Probability is remote.
Then you're
if
saying
it happens,
the possibility of being able to reverse it is that much lesser when you're already landing.
Because the reaction time available would be limited.
So you can then crash the jetliner hypothetically,
Absolutely.
Of course.
That is a hypothetical probability.
Captain Ranganathan, your sense of the possibility of somebody actually breaking in through some of the lacuna that the Air Marshal is talking about. Every software has gaps that hackers tend to try and exploit. If somebody gets in, then what happens?
You see, in the aircraft computer system, I'm sure the manufacturers take all the precautions that you can't hack into it. And even if someone does hack into it, all the autoflight systems in aircraft have two modes. You have the managed mode where everything is controlled by the computer, or you have the manual mode. You can still be on autopilot, but you can take it off the managed mode. So all that a pilot has to do, what is important is the crew should not be complacent. They have to be observant. They just can't take things for granted. And when
the crew should not be compromised.
Which is deviating from the normal. Yeah. The crew should not be compromised. So if they have that, then you will find that the training is good and they are very, very observant. You can pick out something which is not happening as per what you have fed into the computer, and you should take over into the manual mode.
No, but the Air Marshal talks about the possibility of this being timed at a very crucial juncture. For example, just when the plane is approaching the tarmac to land.
No, that time you will find that almost every crew member is alert, unless you are sleeping or you're fatigued, which is the biggest threat. More than your cyber threat, it is fatigue which is a threat, because you can go into what is called a micro sleep, in which case you won't notice something crucial. But you will find that at the time of approach and landing, that is when the crew are most alert, and one or the other. And you have the standard operating procedures where you call out any deviation. So unless the airline in the training does not have a proper SOP, this will not happen.
Okay.
There are enough precautions.
Finally, to the both of you, I want to begin by asking you, Air Marshal, what additional steps do you believe need to be taken to ensure that we don't allow cyber jihadis to break in either into the air traffic control systems or into aviation avionics, airline avionics?
Actually, what Professor Rangarajan has just said, actually that is exactly what you need to do. You need to be aware of the threat. You need to be aware of what is happening around you at the critical junctures. Secondly, aviation by itself, all the systems in the aviation have been historically made in a time when cyber threat was not very potent. All the systems were designed for its system availability, redundancy, not to counter the cyber threats.
And Professor Ranganathan, these comments come on a day when Russia has just announced that 2 people have been arrested in Sinai for collaborating with the bombers who set off the TNT explosives which saw that Russian airliner explode above Egyptian airspace. So this is, which is the biggest breach since 9/11. So this is not just in the realm of a war game in strategic circles. This is a very real and present danger.
For the Russians report that they set off the bomb. See, you can set off a bomb from the ground, but you cannot commandeer an aircraft and make it do what you may be able to do it to a drone. But if you have the human element, the pilots in an aircraft, you have the backup. So even if your automation is hacked into, you can still revert to manual mode and control the aircraft.
What is required most importantly is for the pilot and the crew to remain extra vigilant. Thank you very much.
Also, internationally, you need to focus on this threat and be able to cope with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's a continuous process.
Captain Ranganathan, Air Marshal, thank you very much for joining us on the news.
Thank you,
sir. Thank you. On the one hand, you've got this whole aspect about ISIS attempting to break into the aviation software in ATC, air traffic control rooms, and also on planes. On the other, we're seeing for the first time 2 non-state actors declare war on each other. Anonymous hackers, the world's biggest, most powerful group of hackers, has declared a jihad against the ISIS. Yes, you heard that right. Anonymous hackers has declared that it will do everything it can to take down the infrastructure on the internet that the ISIS enjoys. On the other hand, we're seeing ISIS come out and put out an entire advisory for its members, asking them to beware of anonymous hackers now trying to hack into the ISIS members' Twitter handles, their email IDs, their Facebook pages. This is online cyber jihad.
Attendez-vous donc à une réaction massive d'Anonymous. Sachez que nous vous trouverons et que nous ne lâcherons rien.
A declaration of war by the world's most formidable hackers collective, Anonymous, against the Islamic State. As France fights back after the terrifying attacks in Paris, the hacker group has warned the ISIS that it is preparing to unleash waves of attacks on the extremist group. The warning is straight and simple. Make no mistake, Anonymous is at war with ISIS and won't stop opposing the Islamic State. Expect massive cyber attacks. War is declared. Get prepared. Anonymous from all over the world will hunt you down. That's the message.
Nous allons lancer l'opération la plus importante jamais réalisée contre vous. Attendez-vous à de très nombreuses cyberattaques.
For a group that has always kept its word on cyber attacks, ISIS just found its most formidable online enemy. Bureau Report, India Today.
I want to go across now live to Goa. Joining us from there is Subimal Bhattacharya, one of India's leading cyber security experts. Subimal, welcome to the newsroom. Anonymous has declared jihad against ISIS supporters online. Looked at from a cyber security perspective, what does this mean given that Anonymous supporters actually spend more time trawling the dark internet than anybody else does?
I think the first and most important thing to note is that one non-state actor has now taken on another non-state actor. And you know, you can define that one is possibly good here and the other is extremely bad and with terrorist motives. But the larger issue that we really need to consider here is that is this the time that, you know, the state is failing, the forces of the state are failing and not up to date with cyber tools, and hence the recourse or the fallback upon the non-state actor. Now, having said so, Anonymous has really been following up everything on the net, including the dark web, and they definitely have identified a lot of the ISIS handles as well as the Facebook accounts, and they are, and the way they have warned through the video as well as the email message, they are definitely going to go after the ISIS. The larger issue that we'll need to consider is, will that be enough and will that stop ISIS doing its propaganda? You know,
Foreign Policy magazine has put out an estimate which suggests that 149 ISIS-affiliated websites have been dismantled. Approximately 1,01,000 Twitter handles have been penetrated and 6,000 propaganda videos have been taken down by members of the Anonymous hacking group. Now, why is it that Anonymous can do these things whereas intelligence agencies in Western countries and in South Asia don't seem to be quite as successful, Subimal?
I think, you know, one of the larger issues here, Rahul, to consider is that, you know, nations are still talking to each other. There is no real cyber cooperation still happening on the ground. The intelligence agencies of various countries are just doing their own work, and many of them just don't measure up to the scale at which ISIS and other, you know, bad elements have propagated. So I think, you know, this is also a wake-up call for the intelligence agencies and even the security forces, other than in the intelligence side, to bolster their cyber monitoring capabilities as well as if required.
What I find very interesting is that ISIS has put out a response to the statement put out by Anonymous hackers, and ISIS has actually listed an entire series of steps that its supporters should take, not to open suspicious links, not to talk on DM on Twitter, not to have the same name as their email ID and their Twitter handle. So they're suggesting it's a very interesting online jihad taking place where ISIS is now suggesting to its supporters what to do to prevent Anonymous from hacking in.
Yes, I think, you know, they are just listing out, you know, what would be the typical best practices that most of the security practitioners should offer. But it's very interesting to see that what is the support to Anonymous also for, you know, such an attempt or such a threat that they've laid out from many of the state actors, because this is one first instance where you are directly seeing that one non-state actor taking on the other, And it's also very embarrassing for the various countries, particularly the Western governments, who have already been now starting thinking of cyber warfare of some scale. And unless and until a certain protocol is established, the nations are only talking, they are not concluding anything. So unless a certain conclusion happens about how do you counter such kind of threats, the recourse to or a comfort at organizations like Anonymous coming up to take the cudgels on behalf of the government, that's going to happen.
Very fascinating perspective from Subimal Bhattacharya. Nations are talking to each other, but they're not doing anything to take on the threat posed by cyber jihadis. And this is the first time we're seeing a non-state actor declare war on another non-state actor. Subimal Bhattacharya, for joining us from Goa tonight, thank you very much.
जहाँ तक याद आती रहेगी